Part 1. The Mercy of Strangers. The warning lights turned red across every screen in the control room. Captain Dae-sung stood frozen for 3 seconds, watching the numbers climb. Outside the colony's main dome, the sky was turning orange. The solar flare had hit them harder than anyone predicted. "How bad is it?" he asked, already knowing the answer would be terrible. Taewon, the young engineer, looked up from his console. His face was pale. "All 3 atmospheric processors are fried. The backup systems are melting. We have maybe 4 days before the air becomes poison." Dae-sung felt his chest tighten. New Seoul was home to 3,000 people. Men, women, children. They had left Earth 2 years ago to build something new. Now they were all going to die on this distant rock at the edge of known space. Dr. Hana rushed into the control room. "I heard the alarms. Tell me we have a solution." "We don't," Dae-sung said quietly. "Start sending distress signals to every ship, every station, every colony within range. Tell them we need atmospheric processors or compatible parts. Tell them we'll pay anything." For the next 6 hours, they sent messages into the void. The colony's long-range transmitter pushed their desperate plea across dozens of light years. Dae-sung barely slept. He walked through the colony's corridors, looking at families eating dinner, children playing in the recreation areas, people living their lives without knowing they had so little time left. On the second day, responses started coming back. Most were the same. Too far away. No compatible equipment. Unable to assist. The Galactic Council sent an official message expressing sympathy, but explaining that resources could not be diverted for a human colony. Humanity was too new, too small, too unimportant. Dae-sung read each rejection and felt hope slipping away. The colony had been a dream, Earth's first real step into the greater galaxy. Now it would become a tomb. Taewon worked without stopping, trying to rebuild the processors from spare parts, but there weren't enough pieces. The solar flare had been too powerful. Even Dr. Hana, who always found reasons to smile, moved through the medical bay with empty eyes. On the third day, the air started to smell wrong. The remaining processors were failing faster than expected. Dae-sung made the announcement he had been dreading. "We have 72 hours. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," people cried. Some screamed. Parents held their children. Dae-sung sat in his quarters and thought about how humanity had reached for the stars and found only death. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, a signal came through. It was weak, unscheduled, from a ship that wasn't on any of the major trade routes. "This is Captain Kelm of the merchant vessel Brightwing. We received your distress call. We are Velhorian. We carry atmospheric components that might help. We are changing course to reach you." Taewon almost fell out of his chair. "Who are the Velhorians?" Dae-sung was already pulling up galactic databases. The Velhorians were a minor species. They had maybe 20 colonies, a small merchant fleet, and almost no political power. They were barely more advanced than humanity. "They're coming," Dae-sung said, not quite believing it. "They're actually coming." The Brightwing arrived 18 hours later. It was not an impressive ship. The hull was patched in a dozen places. The engines were old models. But to Dae-sung, it looked like the most beautiful thing in the universe. Captain Kelm came through the airlock with 5 crew members. He was shorter than most humans, with green-gray skin and large dark eyes. He spoke through a translation device in careful, measured words. "We brought what we could," Kelm said. "The components are not exact matches for your systems. But perhaps together we can make them work." Dae-sung wanted to hug him. Instead, he shook Kelm's hand. "You diverted from your route. You'll lose money on your cargo delivery." Kelm's face made an expression that might have been a smile. "Money is replaceable. Lives are not." For the next 40 hours, humans and Velhorians worked side by side. Taewon and the Velhorian engineers tore apart the damaged processors and rebuilt them using the new components. It was like trying to fit pieces from different puzzles together. Nothing matched perfectly. Everything had to be adjusted, rewired, recalibrated. Dr. Hana set up a medical station in the engineering bay. 3 Velhorian crew members collapsed from exhaustion. 1 suffered burns from an electrical surge. Hana treated them all, learning their biology on the spot, adapting human medical techniques to alien physiology. Dae-sung worked alongside everyone else, holding tools, running cables, doing whatever was needed. He watched Kelm work through 3 consecutive shifts without rest. The Velhorian captain's hands were steady even when his eyes showed exhaustion. "Why are you doing this?" Daesung asked during a brief break. "Your government didn't send you." "You came on your own." Kelm was quiet for a moment. "When I was young, my family's ship had an accident. We were stranded. No one came. We barely survived. I remember that feeling. The void is cold and empty, but sometimes someone can choose to make it less cold. Today I choose." With 6 hours of breathable air remaining, Taewon activated the rebuilt processors. Everyone held their breath. The machines hummed, stuttered, then caught. The numbers on the screen started climbing. Green lights appeared one by one. "It's working," Taewon whispered. Then louder, "It's working." The control room erupted in cheers. People hugged each other. Some cried. Daesung felt his legs go weak with relief. 3,000 lives saved. The Velhorian crew looked confused by the celebration until the humans started hugging them too. Dr. Hana kissed Kelm on his forehead, which made the Velhorian captain turn a darker shade of green. 2 days later, when the processors were stable and the colony was safe, Kelm prepared to leave. Daesung offered payment. Earth's government had authorized him to give everything the colony had. Kelm refused. "Keep your resources. You will need them to rebuild. But your cargo delivery," Daesung protested. "You'll face penalties. Let us help." "Today you needed help," Kelm said. "Perhaps one day we will need yours. That is enough." As the Bright Wing prepared to depart, Daesung had Taiwan record every detail of the ship. Registration number, crew names, home port, everything. He created a file and marked it with the highest priority code. "What are you doing?" Taewon asked. "Making sure we remember," Daesung said. "Every detail. Every name. What they did for us. Humanity is small now. We don't have much power. But we have memory, and we will remember this." He sent the file to Earth with a message. "The Velhorians saved us when no one else would. When they were barely better equipped than we are. When it cost them dearly. Record this debt, honor it. Never forget." The Bright Wing jumped to faster than light speed and vanished. The colony returned to normal life. Children went back to school. Engineers repaired other systems. Life continued. But in the captain's office, Daesung kept a photo of Kelm and his crew. Beneath it, he wrote in simple letters, "Humanity remembers." He did not know it then, but those 2 words would change the galaxy. Because humanity did remember, and 30 years later, when the Velhorians needed help, humanity would cross the stars to provide it. The debt was recorded. The memory was sacred, and Captain Kelm's kindness had planted a seed that would grow into something the ancient powers of the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization built on honor. Part 2. The Long Memory, 30 years past. The young engineer Taewon was now in his 50s, his black hair touched with gray. He ran the Human Colonial Engineering Corps, managing building projects across 47 human worlds. Earth had grown. Humanity had expanded, but they were still small compared to the ancient empires that ruled the galaxy. Taiwan was in a meeting about mining operations when his assistant interrupted. "Sir, there's a message from Velhorian space. It's marked urgent and personal." The room went quiet. Everyone knew about the Velhorians. The story of New Soul was taught in every human school. Children learned about Captain Kelm and the Bright Wing before they learned calculus. Taewon opened the message in private. The face on the screen was old, the green-gray skin wrinkled, the dark eyes tired, but Taewon recognized him immediately. "Captain Kelm," he whispered. "I am sorry to reach out this way," Kelm said through the translator. The voice was weaker than Taewon remembered. "I am now a minister for my homeworld. I would not contact you unless the situation was desperate. Our world is dying. A blight destroys our food crops. We have asked the Galactic Council for help. They say we are too small to matter. I remember humans were once too small to matter also. I remember we helped anyway. I do not ask this lightly, but I must ask. Can you help us?" The message ended. Taewon sat in silence for a long time. Then he started making calls. Ambassador Jiwoo was Earth's chief diplomat. Her grandmother had been one of the children saved on New Soul. She had grown up hearing stories about the day the sky turned orange and strangers came from the void to save them. When Taiwan called, she listened to Kelm's message without interrupting. Then she said, "Bring it to the assembly. I'll prepare the vote." The human assembly met in Geneva 3 days later. Representatives from every human world gathered. The debate was fierce. Some argued that humanity's resources were limited. There were human colonies struggling. Earth itself still had poverty and problems. "We cannot save everyone," one representative said. "We must think of our own people first." Taewon stood to speak. He was not a politician. His hands shook slightly. But he had brought something with him, a recording from 30 years ago. He played it for the entire assembly. Captain Dae-sung's voice filled the chamber. "All 3 atmospheric processors are fried. We have maybe 4 days before the air becomes poison." Then Kelm's voice. "We brought what we could. The components are not exact matches for your systems, but perhaps together we can make them work." The recording showed Velhorians working until they collapsed. It showed Dr. Hana treating burned alien hands. It showed Kelm refusing payment. "Today you needed help. Perhaps one day we will need yours." When the recording ended, Taewon spoke. "They saved us when we were nothing. When we had nothing to offer them. When helping us cost them money they could not afford. They did it because it was right. Now they are dying and they ask for our help. What does it say about humanity if we refuse?" The vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted to help. Admiral Boram commanded Earth's 3rd Fleet. She was known as stern and practical. When the orders came to divert her ships to Velhorian space, she read them twice to make sure she understood correctly. "We're taking how much equipment?" she asked. "Everything they need," came the reply. "Agricultural scientists, genetic engineers, medical teams, terraforming technology." The assembly authorized unlimited resources. Boram smiled. It was rare, but when it happened, her crew knew something important was about to occur. "Then we'd better move quickly. Set course for the Velhorian homeworld. Maximum speed." The fleet arrived in Velhorian space 1 week later. 12 ships carrying humanity's best experts and most advanced technology. The Velhorians were shocked. Their orbital stations sent confused messages. "We asked for help, but we did not expect this," the transmission said. Boram responded personally. 30 years ago you saved 3,000 human lives. Today we save yours. This is not a favor, this is a debt repaid." Dr. Hana came out of retirement for the mission. She was 74 now, but her mind was sharp and her hands steady. She had treated the first Velhorians who helped humanity. Now she would help save their entire world. The blight was aggressive. A fungal infection that destroyed the Velhorian primary food crop. The planet's agricultural system was collapsing. People were already starving in rural areas. Human geneticists worked in Velhorian laboratories. They studied the blight, analyzed the crops, and ran thousands of simulations. Earth's most powerful computers were dedicated to finding a solution. Scientists barely slept. Taewon walked through the Velhorian capital and saw the fear in people's faces. Mothers held hungry children. Farmers watched their fields turn black. He thought about New Seoul and how his people must have looked when the air was running out. On the 3rd week, the breakthrough came. A geneticist named Dong Hyun managed to create a crop variant resistant to the blight, but it would take months to grow and distribute across the planet. "We do not have months," the Velhorian agricultural minister said. "People are dying now." Admiral Boram made a decision. "We'll share our food supplies. Every ship in the fleet will transfer 70% of their provisions to Velhorian distribution centers." Her officers protested. "Admiral, that will leave us with barely enough for the journey home." "Then we'll ration carefully," Boram said. "No Velhorian will starve while we have food." The supplies were distributed. Human replicator technology was shared freely. Agricultural machinery was gifted to Velhorian farms. Earth sent more ships with more resources. Over 6 months, the crisis was managed. The resistant crops were planted and began to grow. The blight was contained. The Velhorian homeworld stabilized. Kelm met with Taewon in a garden that had been saved by human-engineered treatments. The old Velhorian moved slowly now, using a walking aid, but his eyes were bright. "You crossed the stars for us," Kelm said. "I knew humans kept records. I did not know they kept their hearts." Taewon felt emotion rise in his throat. "You crossed the stars for us first. When we had nothing, when we were nobody, you saw people who needed help and you helped. That is worth more than any technology or power." "I did what anyone should do," Kelm said, "but most don't," Taewon replied. "Most species calculate profit and politics. You calculated compassion. You taught humanity a lesson we will never forget. Humans never forget a kindness, Captain. Never." Before the human fleet departed, the Velhorian government held a ceremony. They wanted to give humanity territory, resources, trade advantages. Admiral Boram refused it all. We came to repay a debt, not to gain profit.
Keep your resources.
Rebuild your world. Teach your children what friendship means. That is payment enough. News of the mission spread through the galaxy. Most major powers dismissed it as strange human sentimentality, but minor species noticed. Small civilizations watched and wondered. A species called the Torvans reached out to Earth. 50 years ago, we sold your colony ships fuel at a discount when you could not afford full price. We did not think you would remember. Earth's response was immediate. We remember. What do you need? A research outpost that had once shared star charts with human explorers received funding for a new deep space observatory. A medical station that had treated injured human traders got advanced equipment upgrades. A refugee ship that had provided emergency supplies found their displaced population resettled on a human world. The pattern became clear. Humanity was building something new, not an empire based on conquest, not a trade federation based on profit, but a network based on honor, on memory, on the simple principle that kindness deserved to be repaid. Ambassador Jiwoo addressed the Galactic Council. For 10,000 years, this galaxy has operated on power. The strong dominate. The weak are forgotten. Humanity is still weak, but we remember who helped us. And we will always help them in return. This is not politics. This is who we are. The major empires laughed, but 70 minor species quietly began establishing closer ties with humanity. They saw something the empires did not. A civilization that valued honor over advantage was a civilization you could trust. 30 years after New Sol, 54 years before the war that would change everything, humanity planted seeds across the galaxy. Seeds of friendship. Seeds of honor. Seeds that would grow into something powerful. Taewon returned to Earth and updated the file that Captain Dae-sung had started. It was huge now. Thousands of entries. Every kindness received. Every debt repaid. Every species that had helped humanity, no matter how small the gesture. At the top of the file, the words remained. Humanity remembers. It was more than a motto. It was a promise. And the galaxy was about to learn what happens when an entire civilization keeps its promises. Part 3. The pattern emerges, Professor. Young Mi had been studying galactic politics for 20 years. She taught at Earth University and specialized in how civilizations interacted across the stars. Her research had started as academic curiosity. It became something else entirely. She sat in her office surrounded by screens showing data from 5 decades of human expansion. Trade records, diplomatic logs, military movements, aid missions. The numbers told a story that nobody had fully understood until, "Now this is incredible," she whispered to herself. Her research paper was titled "The Pattern of Honor: How Humanity Rewrites Galactic Norms." It documented 23 separate incidents where humanity had intervened to help species that had once aided humans, not in big ways, not for political gain, but systematically, reliably, regardless of cost. A mechanic guild called the Rothan had sold discounted ship parts to early human colonies. They were struggling financially and the discount hurt them. 20 years later, when pirates started raiding Rothan trade routes, human warships appeared to patrol their space. No payment requested. No territory demanded. A small research station had shared star charts with human explorers. The map saved human lives by warning them of dangerous stellar phenomena. 15 years later, when the station's funding was cut, humanity funded their entire deep space observatory program. A refugee ship had provided medical supplies to a human mining colony during an outbreak. It was a small gesture. They could barely spare the medicine. 30 years later, when that refugee species lost their homeworld to a supernova, humanity resettled their entire population across 3 human worlds. Every single kindness remembered. Every single debt repaid. Young Mi published her paper. Within days, it spread across the galactic network. Diplomats read it. Historians analyzed it. Politicians debated it. President Hyun-woo of the United Earth government received calls from dozens of ambassadors. Some were curious. Some were concerned. The Dracon Imperium's ambassador was hostile. "Your behavior is economically irrational," the Dracon ambassador said. His species had ruled their sector for 3,000 years. They understood power, not sentiment. "You waste resources on species that offer no strategic value." Hyun-woo was a slim man in his 60s with patient eyes. He had been a teacher before becoming a politician. We don't measure value the way you do. Clearly, the ambassador said. This weakness will be your downfall. After the call ended, Hyunwoo met with General Soo-jin, Chief of Human Defense Forces. She was 40 years old and had never lost a strategic simulation. Her mind worked like a combat computer, calculating angles and possibilities. The Dracon Imperium is moving forces toward the Outer Rim, Soo-jin said. They're positioning for expansion. Multiple minor species are in their path. Including the Velhorians, Hyunwoo said quietly. Including the Velhorians, Soo-jin confirmed, and 70 other species that we've helped or that have helped us. If the Imperium attacks, we'll have a choice to make. Hyunwoo looked at the star map on his wall. Humanity controlled 200 systems now. Respectable, but nothing compared to empires that had thousands. We're not strong enough to fight them. Not alone, Soo-jin agreed. But we're not alone anymore, are we? She pulled up another map. This one showed something different. A web of connections. 70 species had close diplomatic ties with humanity. Most were small, individually weak. But together they represented over 800 star systems. They trust us, Soo-jin said. Every species on this map trusts humanity more than they trust the Galactic Council. More than they trust the major empires. Because we've proven ourselves, repeatedly. Hyunwoo studied the map. If the Imperium attacks our friends, they'll expect us to calculate the odds and stay home. They don't understand us yet, Soo-jin said. They think honor is weakness. They're about to learn differently. She started moving pieces, quietly relocating ships, establishing supply caches, running training exercises with allied species, building a network that looked like normal diplomatic activity, but was actually a military preparation. The Galactic Council met to discuss the Dracon Imperium's expansion. The major powers debated for days. The Silicate Hegemony said the Outer Rim was too far from their interests. The Crystalline Commonwealth worried about economic disruption. The United Federations wanted to study the issue further. In the end, the Council decided that intervention was not warranted. The Imperium was within their legal rights to expand. The minor species in the Outer Rim were not significant enough to risk a war over. Ambassador Ji-woo, now older but still sharp, listened to the vote with growing anger. When it was her turn to speak, she stood slowly. This council has existed for 12,000 years, she said. In that time, how many minor species have been conquered while you debated? How many civilizations have been erased while you calculated political costs? The council chamber was silent. Humanity has been part of this galaxy for less than a century, Ji-woo continued. We are young, weak, insignificant by your standards. But we have learned something you seem to have forgotten. Memory matters. Honor matters. Friendship is not a calculation, it is a commitment. You speak of sentiment, the Dracon representative said dismissively. Sentiment does not stop warships. No, Ji-woo agreed. But it builds alliances. It creates trust. It makes people willing to stand together. You have thousands of warships, Ambassador. But how many species would fight beside you? How many would risk their lives for the Dracon Imperium? The Dracon Ambassador had no answer. Humanity will remember this vote, Ji-woo said. We will remember who stood with the innocent and who stood aside. We remember everything. She left the chamber. The vote stood. The council would not intervene, but humanity would. President Hyunwoo made a broadcast to all human worlds and allied species. He stood before cameras wearing a simple suit, no military uniform, no intimidating display. He looked like what he was, a teacher about to give a difficult lesson. My fellow humans and friends, he began. For 10,000 years, this galaxy has operated on a simple principle. Power is what matters. The strong do as they will, the weak suffer as they must. Major empires expand, minor species disappear, and the cycle continues. Humanity learned a different lesson. 54 years ago, we were dying on a colony called New Sol. No major power helped us, but a small species called the Velhorians crossed the void to save us. They gained nothing from it. They lost money, risked their lives. Helped anyway, we remembered. 30 years later, when the Velhorians faced extinction, we crossed the void to save them. Since then, we have repaid every kindness, helped every species that helped us. Built friendships based on honor, not advantage. Now the Dracon Imperium plans to conquer the Outer Rim. The Galactic Council will not stop them. The major powers will not intervene, because the species in the Outer Rim are too small to matter. Hyunwoo paused. His voice became harder. But they matter to us. Because some of them helped us when we were small. Because friendship is not a calculation. Because humanity remembers that we are not asking permission. We are not seeking approval. We are simply stating a fact. If the Imperium attacks our friends, we will defend them. All of them. No matter the cost, the broadcast ended. The galaxy held its breath. In the Dracon Imperium's capital, military strategists analyzed the statement. They calculated human military strength, ran simulations, concluded that humanity was bluffing. They have 200 systems, a general said. We have over 3,000. If they fight us, they will be destroyed. But General Sujin was not bluffing. She sent a message to every species that had helped humanity, every civilization that had shown kindness to humans, no matter how small. The message was simple. Humanity has not forgotten you. If you are threatened, we will come. Send word if you need us. We will be there. 70 species sent back the same reply. We stand with humanity. The pattern was complete. What started with one Velhorian captain's kindness had grown into something the ancient empires could not understand. A network built on memory and honor, a coalition of the small and forgotten, united by a species that refused to forget. Professor Youngmi watched events unfold from her university office. She had documented the pattern. Now she would witness what it became. This is going to change everything, she said to her students. The galaxy is about to learn that kindness compounds, that honor has power, that humanity meant what they said. Humans never forget a kindness, and soon the galaxy will feel it. Part 4. The debt called due. The Dracon Imperium moved their fleets at dawn. 300 warships entered Velhorian space without warning. Their admiral broadcast a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. On the Velhorian homeworld, Kelm's great-grandson stood in the Planetary Defense Center. He was younger than the original Kelm had been, only 40 years old, but he carried the same steady determination. His name was also Kelm, passed down through generations along with stories of the day aliens came from the void to save them. Send the message to Earth, young Kelm said. Tell them we do not ask them to die for us, but we must ask for help. The message reached Earth in 3 hours. President Hyunwoo read it in his office with General Sujin standing beside him. Neither spoke for a long moment. The Galactic Council is meeting now, Sujin said. Emergency session. They'll debate for days, Hyunwoo replied. By then the Velhorians will be conquered. Send the order. Mobilize everything. Everything? Sujin asked, making sure she heard correctly. Everything, Hyunwoo confirmed. 60% of our naval forces. Every ship we can spare. We crossed the void today. The order went out across all human worlds. Fleet Admiral Min Seok received it aboard the battleship Indomitable. He was Boram's successor, trained by her personally, and he understood what the order meant. This will leave Earth's core systems barely defended, his second officer said. I know, Min Seok replied. But 67 years ago, the Velhorians risked everything to save 3,000 human lives. Today we risk everything to save them. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. 340 human warships began jumping to Velhorian space. It was the largest military movement in human history. On Earth, the streets went quiet as people watched the news. Parents held children. Teachers paused classes. Everyone understood what was happening. We might lose, one reporter said on the broadcast. But we go anyway, another replied. Because that's who we are now. Admiral Min Seok arrived in Velhorian space to find the Imperium fleet already engaging Velhorian defense stations. The locals were fighting bravely but hopelessly outmatched. Draken ships were larger, better armed, built by an empire 3,000 years old. All human ships, Min Seok broadcast. Battle formation. Protect Velhorian positions. We hold the line. The human fleet moved into position. The Dracon admiral, a veteran named Koth, laughed when he saw them. Humans, he broadcast on open channels. You are outnumbered, outgunned. This is not your fight. Leave now and we will spare you. Min Seok's reply was simple. We made a promise. Humanity keeps its promises. But then something happened that Koth did not expect. Jump signatures appeared across the system. Dozens of them. Then hundreds of ships were arriving from everywhere. Small fleets from species the Dracon had never heard of. Old vessels and new ones. Military ships and converted merchants. They came from 70 different species, all responding to humanity's call. Director Jae-hoon of Human Intelligence had been coordinating quietly for months. Every species that humanity had helped, Every civilization that had helped humanity. They had been preparing for this moment. A Rothan captain broadcast on human frequencies. You protected our trade routes when we were defenseless. Today we stand with you. A refugee species that humanity had resettled sent their entire fleet. You gave us homes when we had nothing. We give you our swords. The research station that humanity had funded appeared with modified civilian ships carrying improvised weapons. For friendship, their message said simply, 70 species, over 2,000 ships, not powerful individually. Many were outdated. Some were barely armed, but together, they formed a coalition fleet that outnumbered the Draken Imperium. Admiral Koth stared at his screens in disbelief. This is impossible. These species have no alliance, no treaty, no unified command, but he was wrong. They did have something binding them. Something stronger than any treaty. Memory, honor, friendship, the knowledge that humanity had kept its word and would keep it again. All ships, Minsuk broadcast to the coalition. We fight together. No one gets left behind. We hold this line. The Battle of Velhorian Sky began. The Draken fleet attacked with overwhelming firepower. Their ships were superior in every way. But the coalition fought with something the Imperium could not match: trust. Human commanders coordinated with alien captains they had trained with for months. Small ships used speed to harass larger vessels. Everyone protected each other. Captain Yunji commanded the battlecruiser Remembrance. She was 32 years old and had graduated top of her class at Naval Academy. When a Drakon dreadnought began targeting a Velhorian evacuation convoy, she made a decision. Full power to engines, she ordered. Ramming course. Captain, we won't survive that, her first officer said. The evacuees won't survive if we don't, Yunji replied calmly. The convoy has 3,000 civilians, mostly children. Prepare for impact. The Remembrance accelerated directly into the dreadnought's path. Point defense systems tore through the ship's hull. Explosions ripped through decks. But Yunji kept the engines firing until the last moment. The Remembrance struck the dreadnought's reactor section at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of light visible from the planet's surface. The evacuation convoy escaped. Yunji's sacrifice was broadcast across the fleet. It hardened every resolve. Species that barely knew humans began fighting with desperate courage. They had seen what humanity was willing to give. They would give the same. The battle lasted 3 weeks. Not because the coalition was winning. They were not. The Draken ships destroyed coalition vessels at a steady rate. But for every ship lost, the coalition held its position. They would not retreat, would not abandon the Velhorians, would not break. Admiral Koth had expected a quick victory. Instead, he faced grinding attrition. His ships took damage. His crews grew exhausted. Supplies began running low. The coalition kept fighting. On the 15th day, a Drakon cruiser's crew mutinied. They refused to continue fighting species that clearly valued each other more than the Imperium valued them. It was the first crack. By the 20th day, other Drakon ships began having morale problems. They were not losing, but they could not win. The coalition would not break. How do you defeat an enemy willing to die for each other? On the 21st day, the Galactic Council finally acted. They negotiated a ceasefire. The Drakon Imperium agreed to withdraw. They claimed it was a tactical decision. Everyone knew the truth. They had been fought to a standstill by an alliance of the small and forgotten. The coalition fleet had lost over 600 ships. 30% of humanity's navy was destroyed. 150,000 humans died. Unji and the entire crew of the Remembrance were gone. Countless other species suffered terrible losses, but Velhorian space was free. The Outer Rim remained independent. The coalition had held. Fleet Admiral Minsiok stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship and looked at the survivors. Human ships flying alongside Velhorian, Rothan, and dozens of other species. Battered but unbroken. Young Kelm's face appeared on his screen. The Velhorian was crying. You lost so much for us. 30% of your fleet. All those lives. We paid a debt 67 years old, Minsuk replied. Your great-grandfather crossed the void to save strangers. We crossed it to save friends. Every life lost honored that first kindness. The fleet began the journey home. Earth's economy was in ruins. The military was depleted. Families mourned their dead. President Hyun-woo addressed the nation with tears in his eyes. We paid a terrible price, he said, but we kept our word. We honored our debts. We showed the galaxy that humanity means what it says. That kindness will be repaid. That friendship is sacred. Some will say we were foolish, that we should have calculated the costs and stayed home. But we are not a species that calculates the value of friendship. We remember, we honor, we keep our promises, Captain. Unji and every human who died in Velhorian, space gave their lives for something worth dying. For honor, memory, the knowledge that humanity stands with its friends. Across human space, people grieved, but they also felt something else. Pride. They had done something the ancient empires thought impossible. They had shown that honor was not weakness. That memory had power. That humanity was willing to suffer for what it believed. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. For 10,000 years, power had been everything. Now a young species had fought an empire to a standstill for the sake of keeping a promise. Professor Youngmi updated her research. The Battle of Velhorian Sky would be studied for centuries. Not as a military victory, but as something else. The day the galaxy learned that humanity was different, they felt it. She wrote in her new paper, every species in the galaxy felt humanity's conviction. The question now is, what comes next? Part 5. The Galaxy Feels It. 28 years after the Battle of Velhorian Sky, the galaxy looked different. Not in the big obvious ways. The ancient empires still existed. The major powers still controlled vast territories. But something fundamental had shifted. Premier Sang-hee led the United Earth government now. She was 53 years old, the daughter of refugees who had been resettled by humanity's kindness programs. She understood what it meant to receive help from strangers, to be seen as valuable when others called you worthless. She stood before the Compact of Free Worlds Assembly. 200 species sat in the chamber, small civilizations that had been ignored by major powers for thousands of years. Now they were united by something stronger than any empire had built. Trust. We gather here not as subjects to a throne, Sang-hee said, not as tributaries to an empire, but as equals, friends, partners who have proven we will stand together. The chamber erupted in approval, voices from 100 different species all agreeing. The compact had formed 5 years after the battle. Inspired by humanity's willingness to fight for the Velhorians, 200 minor species had created a mutual defense alliance. The rules were simple. If one member was attacked, all members responded. No one would be abandoned. No one would be forgotten. Humanity had been offered leadership. Every species expected it. But Premier Sang-hee had refused. We are equals, she had said. Humanity will not rule over friends. We will stand beside them. The compact operated on rotation. Every species took turns leading. Decisions required consensus. It was slow, messy, and inefficient. But it worked because every member trusted every other member. That trust had been earned through decades of humanity keeping its promises. Admiral Min Seok, now retired, served as a military advisor. His hair was white, his face lined with age, but his mind remained sharp. He helped coordinate the compact's defense forces, training officers from 200 different species to work together. The key is not power, he taught young commanders. The key is trust. Your wingman needs to know you will cover them. They need to know you will not abandon your position. Trust is what wins battles. The Draken Imperium watched the compact's growth with growing concern. Their intelligence services reported something alarming. Species that had been their tributaries were quietly negotiating with the compact. Worlds that had paid them taxes for centuries were considering changing allegiance. The Imperium's Supreme Council met to discuss the threat. These are minor species, one counselor said. Individually worthless. Why should we fear them? Because they trust each other, another replied. And no one trusts us. It was true. The Drakon Imperium ruled through fear and power. They had thousands of ships and controlled vast territories. But when they asked for allies, none came. When they requested support, they received only calculated responses. No species would risk anything for the Imperium because the Imperium had never risked anything for anyone else. The Silicate hegemony faced similar problems. They were rich, powerful, ancient, but their tributary states were restless. They had watched humanity fight for the Velhorians and wondered why their own overlords never fought for them. We pay tribute to the hegemony, one species said in a secret transmission to the compact. But when we are threatened, they calculate costs. When humans' friends are threatened, humans appear with fleets. Which system would you prefer to live under? More species began joining the compact. Not quickly, not dramatically. but steadily, one or two each year. Each new member was welcomed, supported, and integrated. The compact's territory grew larger than any empire except the oldest three. Professor Youngmi, now in her 80s, gave a lecture at Earth University to a classroom filled with students from 30 different species. Human, Velhorian, Rothan, and dozens more all learning together. For 10,000 years, she explained, the galaxy operated on power. Empires rose and fell based on military strength. Species survived by submitting to stronger powers. This was considered natural law. Then humanity entered the galaxy, weak, young, insignificant, but carrying a different philosophy: memory, honor, friendship. At first, major powers laughed. They saw sentiment where humanity saw strength. The Battle of Velhorian Sky changed everything. Humanity proved that honor creates alliances stronger than fear. That memory builds trust deeper than treaties. That friendship is worth fighting for. A Velhorian student raised her hand. But humans still suffered terrible losses. 30% of your fleet. Thousands of lives. Was it worth it? Youngmi smiled gently. Ask the Velhorians if it was worth it. Ask any species in the compact. Ask yourself whether you would rather live in a galaxy where power is all that matters, or a galaxy where friendship has value. The student nodded slowly. Understanding on the Velhorian homeworld, a monument stood at the site where the Bright Wing had first landed 95 years ago. The original Captain Kelm had been gone for 20 years, but his legacy lived on. His great-great-grandson, another Kelm, maintained the memorial. Humans visited regularly. Tourists came to see where it all began. Students studied the historical site. Veterans of the Battle of Velhorian Sky came to remember fallen comrades. The monument's main inscription was simple. On this day, strangers became friends. Kindness crossed the void, and humanity learned the lesson that would reshape the galaxy. Below it, added after the battle, humans never forget a kindness, the galaxy feels it. Around the monument, human and Velhorian children played together. Mixed families walked through gardens maintained by both species. It was difficult to tell where one culture ended and another began. They had grown together. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. For 12,000 years, they had maintained stability through a balance of power among major empires. Now that balance was threatened by something they did not understand. Unity without conquest, alliance without submission. Ambassador Jiwoo, now very old and using mobility support, addressed the council one final time before retirement. This council fears the compact, she said. You see it as a threat to order, but you misunderstand. The compact is not a threat. It is an alternative, a choice. For thousands of years, small species had only one option: submit to a major power or die. The compact offers a third option: stand together, support each other, live with dignity. Humanity did not create this alternative alone. We simply showed it was possible. We proved that honor works, that friendship has power, that memory matters. The council chamber was silent. The galaxy is changing, Jiwoo continued, not because of military force, not because of conquest, but because species are choosing differently. They are choosing trust over fear, partnership over submission, memory over expedience. You can resist this change. You can fight it. But you cannot stop it, because it is built on something stronger than any empire. The simple truth that everyone wants to be valued, to be remembered, to have friends who will stand with them. Jiwoo finished her speech and left the chamber. She would retire to New Seoul, where the whole story began. She would spend her remaining days teaching young diplomats about honor and memory. Premier Sang-hee visited Earth University to give a major address. Students from across the compact gathered to hear her. The speech would be remembered for generations, my friends, she began. 95 years ago, a small merchant ship called the Bright Wing changed course to help strangers. Captain Kelm and his crew saved 3,000 human lives. They gained nothing from it. They lost money, risked their safety, helped anyway. That single act of kindness taught humanity a lesson. We learned that in a cold, empty universe, warmth matters. That in a galaxy ruled by power, compassion has strength. That in 10,000 years of expedience, honor can still mean something. For nearly a century, humanity has remembered. We have repaid every kindness, helped every species that helped us, stood with friends when it cost us dearly. Many called this foolish. They said we were weak. But look at this room. 200 species united. Look at the compact we have built. 800 star systems standing together. Look at how the galaxy has changed. Sang-He paused, letting her words settle. We are still not the strongest military power. The Dracon Imperium has more ships. The Silicate Hegemony has more territory. The ancient empires have more history. But we have something they do not. We have trust. When a compact member calls for help, 50 species respond immediately. Not because they fear us, not because they owe us taxes, but because they trust us. Because they know we have kept our word for 95 years. Because they remember, just as we remember. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not military might, but the simple demonstration that another way is possible. That honor works. That friendship has value. That memory shapes the future. The address was broadcast across compact space. Species translated it into their languages. Teachers read it to children. Veterans of old battles listened with tears in their eyes. On Earth, in Geneva, where the First Assembly had voted to help the Velhorians, a museum preserved the original recordings. Visitors could hear Captain Kelm's voice. Today you needed help. Perhaps one day we will need yours. And Captain Daesung's response, humanity remembers.